Senator Ted Cruz is one of the highest profile politicians in all of the United States. He serves in the U.S. Senate, sits on Foreign Relations Committee and on the Judiciary Committee, among others. He also hosts one of the top podcasts in all of America. Cruz is rumored to have interest in running for president again somewhere down the road. And every now and again, he's part of the conversation as a potential nominee for the Supreme Court. I sat down with Senator Cruz and asked him about the state of the world and talked to him a little bit about what he thinks of the job President Trump is doing in this second go-round at the White House. Senator, thanks for doing this with us.
Always good to be with you.
The city of New York has chosen a socialist as their Democratic nominee for mayor. What does this tell us?
Well, I suppose it's truth in advertising. It is who the Democrat Party is. Chuck Schumer immediately endorsed the socialist. My reaction is one socialist endorses another. You've got this young kid. He has no experience running anything, so they want him to run New York City. He openly embraces socialism, so he's going to chase away capitalists, anyone with a business. New York is going to become an even worse place to run a business, an even worse place to get a job. He is someone who is virulently anti-Israel. He is a Muslim who cheers on the radicals. The day after October 7th, he put out a statement condemning Israel. Literally the day after Hamas had murdered 1,200 Jews in Israel, on the worst single mass murder of Jews in a day since the Holocaust. This guy's reaction was to blast Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. He is now the Democrats' choice to lead the city of New York. I'll tell you, if you're a New Yorker and you want your family safe from crime, you want your family safe from illegal immigrants and murderers and rapists and child molesters, well, electing a left-wing socialist who cheers on the terrorists, you know, I got to say, for young people, it makes me think that young people don't remember what New York was like in the 1970s. And I'm sorry to say, if they end up in the general election putting this clown in the mayor's office, tragically, New York is going to feel a lot of pain because the policies he's advocating, they don't work.
You serve on foreign relations, and so let's kind of do an around the world, if we will. You mentioned Israel. Let's talk about Gaza first.
Yeah.
Where are we now, and how has that whole thing unfolded, and where does the United States need to be from this point forward when we talk about Gaza?
Well, listen, in the wake of October 7th, what Israel has done is extraordinary. They have targeted and they have publicly committed to eliminating Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization that seeks the destruction of the state of Israel, the murder of every Jew in Israel. And the Israeli military has engaged in a surgical attack that has taken out Hamas's leadership. It's taken out their terrorists at an unprecedented level. Likewise, Hezbollah, which is up in the north, Hezbollah immediately decided they wanted to join the fray. So they began firing rockets into Israel. And so the government of Israel expanded it and said, we're going to take out Hezbollah as well. And I will tell you, the military operation they carried out against Hezbollah was extraordinary. If you remember the pagers, where this was an operation that took years to put into place, but they had pagers that they managed through a front company to sell to Hezbollah's leadership. Hezbollah's leadership gave the pagers to their top terrorists, and the pagers had little explosives in them, and Israel detonated them, and it was as precisely targeted a military strike as you could have. It was Hezbollah's leadership who decided who are the worst terrorists we have that we want to be able to page to commit murder in an instant, and those are the ones to whom the explosives were targeted.
Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas are all generally recognized as proxy groups for Iran.
Yes.
Israel and Iran have now had at it, and of course the United States got involved there as well. Tell me your thoughts on Iran.
Well, I think what has happened in Iran in the last 2 weeks has been unbelievably important. And the bottom line is today, Israel is safer and America is safer. What happened at the beginning of the Trump administration, President Trump gave Iran 60 days. 60 days to negotiate, and he said the only acceptable standard was complete dismantlement of their nuclear centrifuges, shutting them all down, dismantling them, because he said quite rightly, Iran will not be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Well, at the end of the 60 days, the Ayatollah said, He would not shut down even a single centrifuge. And in fact, he said he's going to build more centrifuges and continue charging towards having a nuclear weapon. On the 61st day, Israel began its bombing attack on Iran. And again, much as with Hezbollah and Hamas, that they carried it out with absolute precision. They took out the senior leadership of Iran's military, those generals who would carry out a war against Israel or a war against America. Israel systematically decapitated that military leadership. They also took out the senior nuclear scientists in Iran, and they took out many of the nuclear research facilities. But they had a problem, which is the major nuclear weapons research facility in Iran. It's called Fordo. And Fordo was built deliberately in the basement of a mountain. And it was built in the basement of a mountain so that it would be resistant to aerial bombing. And Israel does not have bombs big enough to destroy the Fordo nuclear weapons research facility. America does. We have what are called bunker buster bombs. They're huge bombs. They're 30,000 pounds. They're designed precisely to penetrate underground and take out underground facilities like Fordo. And this Saturday, President Trump made the decision. He ordered a limited and targeted bombing run. 7 B-2 stealth bombers took off from Missouri, flew halfway around the world, and they delivered 14 bunker buster bombs. They targeted 3 nuclear weapon sites in Iran. 2 they hit with bunker buster bombs, and the third one, a submarine launched 30 Tomahawk missiles at. The operation was an absolute success. It utterly devastated the targets that they were shooting at, and not a single American casualty resulted. The planes flew back, and it was extraordinary. Today, America is safer because Iran's nuclear weapon capability has been eliminated.
Oftentimes when we talk about news from the Middle East, it has to do with war, conflict, death, hostages, terrorists. It's not always good news. But the president recently made a trip that was good news. He stopped and visited with the Saudis, with the Qataris, with UAE. How important are America's Arab friends?
Very important. And I will tell you, by the way, every Arab country is cheering that President Trump took out Iran's nuclear weapons capability, because the entire Middle East, you cannot find a country in the Middle East that wants the Ayatollah to have nuclear weapons. Listen, when the Ayatollah chants death to America, I believe him. When he calls Israel the little Satan and America the great Satan, I believe him. And it says something that when Israel went to war with Iran to take out their nuclear weapons capability, not a single country said we stand with Iran. None of them. All of their neighbors knew the Ayatollah with a nuclear weapon is a nightmare for the Middle East, and it's a nightmare for the world. And I want to say something in particular. I think Americans should be particularly grateful right now to the people of Israel, because the people of Israel took out much of Iran's nuclear weapons capability, and that makes America safer. Because what President Trump did Saturday night, yes, he was standing with Israel, but much more importantly, he was defending America. Understand, the Ayatollah is also developing an ICBM. What is an ICBM? Well, that stands for Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. You don't need an ICBM for Iran to attack Israel. They're close enough that ordinary ballistic missiles can do. The only reason the Ayatollah has been working to develop an ICBM is to deliver a nuclear warhead to an American city and potentially murder thousands, if not millions, of Americans. And so both Israel and President Trump acted decisively to ensure that the Ayatollah is not able to murder the Americans that he's pledged that he wants to kill.
Let's spin the globe just a little bit and talk about Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
President Trump tends to play a pretty good hand of poker. You can't always tell what he's thinking. But if I'm not mistaken, he looks pretty frustrated with Vladimir Putin and the Russians right now. What do you know?
He clearly is frustrated. Listen, I think this war is going to come to an end. And it's going to come to an end, in all likelihood, this year with some form of a negotiated settlement. President Zelensky in Ukraine is not going to get everything they want. It's going to be a negotiated settlement. But I'll tell you, the U.S. Congress, there is not going to be additional military aid going to Ukraine. And so the Europeans have expressed some frustration with us, and my response for the Europeans is great. If you want to fund the war, you can do so. We've sent over $100 billion. We're done. What I have urged President Trump is this needs to end with a negotiated settlement, and it needs to end with a clear and discernible loss for Russia. Russia is not our friend. Putin is not our friend. and this needs to end with a loss. That's how I hope it will end up.
Before I let you go, let's talk about a couple of things here at home. One of them, border security.
Yeah.
Last time you and I sat down, there was a bill pending before the Senate that would have allowed 5,000 illegals every day to get the golden ticket and come into the United States. Tom Homan just reported that in the month of May, ICE released zero people, not in a day, in the entire month of May. Not 150,000 that would have been in. What happened on January 20th of this year?
Look, the world changed. And listen, we had an election in November that the entire country said, we want to change course. We're not happy about the course we're in. And the open border we had for 4 years was a major, if not the major issue in the election. Joe Biden and the Democrats allowed 12 million illegal immigrants to flood into this country, the worst illegal immigration in our nation's history. I represent Texas. I see it firsthand every single day. We were seeing Americans murdered every day. We were seeing women raped. We were seeing children violently raped by illegal immigrants every single day because of the Democrats' open border policies. I predicted last year, if and when President Trump is reelected, that will end, and it will end immediately. It won't take a year. It won't take 6 months. It will happen immediately. Within days of President Trump taking the oath of office, the rate of illegal crossings dropped 99%. It is staggering. And I'll tell you why. A lot of people are puzzled and say, well, how could that be? The answer is simple. The most important question for securing the border is a policy question. What happens when you apprehend someone who's here illegally? If the answer is you put them on a plane and you fly them home, well, almost everybody who comes to this country has a cell phone. So they pick up the phone, they call home, and they say, don't come. They won't let you stay. On the other hand, if it was the case under Biden and the Democrats, you say you can stay. What city do you want to go to? Again, they have a cell phone, they call home, and they tell everyone, come on in. They're letting you stay. That ended on January 20th.
Let's talk about one spending item. That is the biggest story all spring was DOGE.
Yeah.
First, it was going to be $2 trillion that would be cut. Then they ratcheted that back. It would be about $1 trillion that they would cut. And now it's down to maybe $300 billion if all goes well. Was there not as much waste in government as everyone thought?
So there's a lot of waste in government, but cutting government spending is hard because it turns out that when you're spending money, 100% of the time, the person getting the money fights to keep it. And so politically, look, we're bankrupting our country, and the dirty little secret is there's a bipartisan coalition behind it. And so on any multi-trillion-dollar spending bill, you get all the Democrats and about half the Republicans. And there are about 20 of us who will vote no, who will vote to stop the spending, to rein in the deficit, to rein in the debt. And I'll tell you, we're in the middle of one big, beautiful bill. I and other fiscal conservatives are fighting to cut spending more, but it is an uphill fight right now because there are a number of members of our party that do not want to rein in spending.
Final question, and that is Donald Trump. We've talked about Iran. We've talked about spending. We've talked about the border. He's been in office 5 months.
Yep.
Donald Trump 2.0 has been in office 5 months. What would you give him, Professor Cruz? What would you give him for a grade, A, B, C, D, F? What would you grade him serving as president these last 5 months?
A+. And I think this second term has been orders of magnitude better than the first term. I think the first term, when it came in, I think the president and his team, frankly, were a little bit surprised to be there. And they made some mistakes. You look at some of the cabinet appointments. He put some people in place in the first term who did not serve him well, who were fighting against him. And those mistakes really were costly. I think this second term, particularly having been out of office for 4 years, he and his team were thinking about what needs to be done. And they've hit the ground running with a speed, with a volume and velocity that is breathtaking, and an energy. And listen, the first term, I was President Trump's strongest ally in the Senate. This term, I am his strongest ally in the Senate. And we are getting an incredible amount accomplished. And the great thing is we're just getting started.
Thanks for doing it. Pleasure as always, my friend.
Appreciate it.